Today, we are going to discuss the learning outcome, understanding the activities and responsibilities of the solutions architect, along with the key knowledge and behaviors needed to develop achievable requirements. Over this session, we will look at how an architect takes a project, brief apart, evaluates the systems already in place, and carries out the day-to-day responsibilities of the role. We will also explore the behaviors that make problem-solving effective and finish with the idea of a technical vision and why sharing it matters. Here is the shape of what lies ahead. We start with how a solutions architect analyses and deconstructs a project brief, then move on to evaluating the capabilities of existing systems. From there, we look at the typical responsibilities of the role and the behaviors that underpin effective problem-solving before turning to the notion of a technical vision. Throughout, there are worked examples grounded in real project scenarios, so the theory always lands in something concrete. A project brief is almost never a finished specification. Think of it as an opening statement of intent, something you have to interrogate rather than simply build from. Briefs tend to blend business language with hidden technical assumptions, so the architect's job is to separate what has been clearly stated from what is only implied. That means identifying the stakeholders and their interests, pulling out the explicit requirements and constraints, and surfacing the unstated needs nobody has written down. Get this wrong and the scope gaps only reveal themselves late, usually when they are expensive to fix. When you deconstruct a brief for a complex system, it produces two linked kinds of specification. Functional specifications describe what the system must actually do, its features, its workflows, the way users interact with it, and how data flows in, gets processed, and comes back out. Non-functional specifications describe how well it must do those things, so targets for performance, security, availability, scalability, and compliance, plus constraints such as budget and chosen technology. The discipline to remember is that both sets must trace back to the original brief, so nothing creeps in that the client never asked for. Complex systems rarely fail in one neat, isolated place, which is why interdependencies need mapping early. A change to a single component can ripple outward and disturb others you had not considered. The ones worth tracing are the data flows between applications and databases, the integration points with third-party services, and any shared infrastructure such as networks or identity. Mapping these connections up front reduces the integration risk that otherwise bites late in the project, and it also tells you the sensible order in which to sequence the development work. Let us ground that in an example. A retailer asks for an online ordering platform that plugs into its existing warehouse and finance systems, and the brief says it should be fast and reliable but gives no numbers. The functional need is clear enough: customers placing, tracking, and cancelling orders. The non-functional side is where the architect earns their keep, translating a vague word like speed into a measurable response time target. Then come the interdependencies, order data syncing with warehouse stock, and completed orders triggering invoicing in finance. And notice the assumption worth challenging, whether that warehouse system can even accept real-time updates. A new solution rarely begins with a blank slate, and the systems already in place quietly shape what is possible. Examination is about establishing what the current estate can genuinely do, looking honestly at existing application functionality and its limits, at the structure, quality, and accessibility of the data, and at infrastructure capacity together with any technical debt. Evaluation then compares that real capability against the new requirements. Wherever the two do not meet, you have found a gap, and those gaps are precisely what defines the scope of the new work. Whatever you find has to be written down, because decisions built on memory are neither transparent nor repeatable. Good documentation creates a shared, agreed baseline everyone can point to. It should capture who owns each system and who to contact, the known constraints and limitations, and the interfaces and dependencies on other systems. That baseline is what you compare against later, and it is what an audit relies on. Above all, it reduces the project's dependence on tacit knowledge that lives only in one person's head. It is worth weighing what good evaluation buys you against what skipping it costs. Done well, it gives realistic timelines because you know your true starting point. It lets you reuse existing capability instead of rebuilding. It flags integration risks early, and it earns the trust of stakeholders. Rushed or skipped, the opposite unfolds. Hidden technical debt surfaces mid-project, effort and budget are underestimated. Incompatible assumptions force rework, and sponsors quietly lose confidence. The lesson is simple. The time spent evaluating is repaid many times over. The solutions architect sits right between business intent and technical delivery, and the responsibilities reflect that middle position. They align the technical components with what the organization is actually trying to achieve, act as a conduit between stakeholders and developers, and keep development activity moving against the plan. They also manage and balance risk across the whole solution, resolve the issues that inevitably emerge, and produce the technical documentation the developers rely on. We will unpack the most important of these over the next few slides. Two of those responsibilities are closely linked, and together they keep the solution both relevant and understood. The first is alignment with organizational goals, tracing every technical decision back to a genuine business objective, which stops the team building something technically elegant but commercially pointless. The second is that conduit role, translating business language into technical requirements on the way in, and translating technical constraints back into business impact on the way out. Without someone doing this well, teams end up building the wrong thing and building it beautifully. As conditions shift, the architect is the one keeping delivery on track. Control means checking that the work genuinely matches the agreed specifications and signing off on the significant design decisions. Managing risk means weighing technical risk against schedule and cost, and crucially making those trade-off decisions visible to stakeholders rather than burying them. And then there is resolving issues before they escalate, which matters because unresolved problems do not stay the same size. They compound and grow more expensive the longer they are left. Technical documentation is a genuine deliverable, not something you scribble at the end if there happens to be time. Its purpose is to give developers a clear, agreed reference to build from. Effective documentation includes the architecture diagrams and component descriptions, the interface specifications and data definitions, and, importantly, the design decisions along with the reasoning behind them. That last part matters because recording why a choice was made reduces ambiguity, prevents rework, and makes handover, maintenance, and future change far less painful. Here is how those responsibilities look in a live project. Halfway through building a customer portal, the finance team asks for an extra reporting feature that was never in the original brief. The conduit role kicks in first, gathering the request and clarifying its business justification. The control role assesses the impact on the current plan, and the risk role weighs the delay against the value the feature would add. If it is approved, the documentation role captures the change and the reason for it. What stakeholders see is a considered decision, not an ad hoc scramble. Behaviors, not just knowledge, decide how well an architect copes with messy, ambiguous problems. Objectivity is the discipline of judging options on the evidence rather than on personal preference, and resisting the pull towards a favorite technology or a pet design. Exploration is its partner, actively investigating several possible solutions and testing your assumptions before committing to any of them. When these two behaviors are missing, Options get narrowed far too early, and you can talk yourself into the first idea long before you have earned it. Communication is not a single event at kickoff. It is a behavior you sustain right through delivery. Expectations have to be actively managed as the work unfolds, and this matters most in iterative development. When you release a minimum viable product and the scope shifts over time, stakeholders need regular, honest updates on progress. Neglect that, and people are ambushed at delivery by something they did not expect. Keep it consistent and you build trust, which in turn softens the natural resistance people feel towards change. Naming things explicitly is one of the core disciplines of good problem solving. Assumptions are the statements you are treating as true without full evidence. Exclusions are what the solution will deliberately not deliver, drawing a clear boundary. Constraints are the fixed limits you must work within, whether budget, time, or technology. And dependencies and risks cover what you are relying on from others and what might go wrong. The reason this matters is blunt. Undocumented assumptions are one of the most common causes of projects quietly failing. Disciplined documentation practice underpins all of this. Version control of your solution documents means recording the author, the last updated date, the review date, and the version number, so everyone is genuinely working from the current, correct version rather than an old copy. Managing change requests means logging, assessing, and formally approving each change, and tying everyone back to a documented reason. Without that discipline, documentation drifts out of date quickly, and once people stop trusting it, they stop using it. It helps to see how each behavior protects the project from a particular kind of failure. Losing objectivity leads to biased, weaker choices. Skipping exploration means viable options are simply never seen. Poor stakeholder communication breeds mistrust and rework. Unstated assumptions and risks resurface later as costly surprises. Weak version control has teams building from outdated documents. And taken together, these failures stack up into higher cost, longer delays, and thoroughly dissatisfied stakeholders. Each good behavior is really a form of insurance. A technical vision is the bridge between business ambition and technical delivery. It is a clear statement of how the solution will meet the organization's needs, aimed at the specific business problems in front of you and mindful of the wider technology and business landscape around them. Its real value is as a reference point, something every later design decision can be checked against. Notice that it sits above individual features, describing the overall direction of travel rather than the detail of any one part. A vision on its own is inspiring but not yet actionable, so it has to become a plan. That plan is the roadmap, and it builds on the vision by estimating the realistic timelines for each delivery phase and the resources required, both the people and the technology. This is what turns a vision into something credible and, just as importantly, fundable, because sponsors can see exactly what they are committing to. It also gives you something concrete to track progress against, so you can tell whether you are keeping your commitments. Internal audiences need the vision so they can plan and commit their resources. Those audiences include the managers and employees affected by the change, and the board members, owners, or investors behind it. Managers use the vision to plan their team's capacity, employees use it to understand how their own work is going to change, and the board and investors use it to justify continuing to fund the project. In other words, the same vision serves quite different needs depending on who is reading it. External audiences are just as affected by the direction the solution takes. They include the customers who will use it or feel its effects, the suppliers involved in delivery or integration, and the government and regulatory bodies with a compliance interest. Customers benefit from clarity about what is changing and when, so there are no nasty surprises. Regulators, meanwhile, need assurance that compliance has genuinely been thought through. Sharing the vision outward is how you keep all of them aligned rather than reacting late. So, what is the value of sharing the vision widely, and what is the risk of keeping it to yourself? Shared openly, it builds common understanding and commitment, surfaces concerns and constraints early while they are still cheap to address, aligns expectations across every group, and strengthens the case for the resources and funding you need. Kept quiet, stakeholders drift into conflicting assumptions, resistance erupts late when change is costly, investment decisions get made without the full picture, and the solution slowly wanders away from the original business need. Let us gather the key terms in one place. A project brief is the initial statement of what a client or sponsor wants delivered. A functional specification describes what a system must do, while a non-functional specification describes how well it must perform. The technical vision states how a solution will meet business needs, and the roadmap is the plan estimating the timelines and resources to get there. The conduit is the architect linking stakeholders and developers. Version control is the disciplined record of who changed a document and when. And a change request is the formal way a change to scope is proposed and approved. Before we close, here are a few questions to test yourself against. Can you explain the difference between a functional and a non-functional specification? Can you say why evaluating existing systems reduces project risk, and name 3 typical responsibilities of a solutions architect? Then think about why objectivity matters when solving architecture problems, what version control of documentation should record, and why a technical vision needs sharing with both internal and external stakeholders. If you can answer those comfortably, this outcome has landed.